Today we've got Laura Dudley and David Kleeman from Dubit, and we've got Ellie Harmer from Ofcom. So we'll get started, and then at the very end of both sessions we'll have a little Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
So, me and David are from Dubit, and Dubit is actually 25 this year. We were founded by teens back in 1999 through the Young Enterprise Scheme, so that was some 13 to 14-year-olds. So we are specialists in youth research, and we were actually started by teenagers themselves as well. So that's like a little fact about us. And like I said, we do have a kind of research arm and then a game studio, and obviously we quite often collaborate because in research we do specialise within kind of the entertainment industry, but also the kids' education industry as well. And in research, we run a global tracker, which reaches around 16,000 families a year. So yeah, that's UK, US, Europe, etc. And if there's any kind of data and graphs during this presentation, we're using UK trends data for that. And yeah, the game studio, they build apps and they build games for all different types of companies, like I said, educational, entertainment, but they actually do specialise in kind of creating branded experiences in Roblox as well, and getting brands onto Roblox and building the brand on there. So methods used for this session then. So a couple of weeks ago, I ran a click room group, which you can see there on the left-hand side. And the click room is actually an internal platform that was built by Dubit Interactive at the time, but now Studio. And it's an online focus group tool, as you can see. It's all text-based, which means that, you know, there's no speaking to each other. It kind of helps, especially young people, such as younger children, feel anonymous and safe because they can access it from home as well and from different parts of the country. And it's especially helpful when it comes to something which might be sensitive. But in this case, we conducted 4 clickroom groups. We split the ages. It was 12 to 15, but it was male participants and female participants, because we do find with teenagers that they feel a bit more at ease, even in these kind of scenarios, that they're able to kind of share things a little bit easier. So yeah, there were 27 participants from across the UK there as well. We're also using some insights from State of the Nation, which was UK based as well. So for that, we surveyed and included some face-to-face sessions as well from across the country with about 500 teenagers of the same age as well. And that was looking at kind of topics that they were interested in for themselves, but also that they thought were interesting from the perspective of like the wider society and like other communities as well, and what they thought you know, was important to discuss with their peers and their parents and things like that. So we've got some insights from there. And then finally, we conducted research for Bodacious and on behalf of the Walton Family Foundation. And that was looking, that was actually in the US, but that was actually looking at how platforms such as Roblox, Roblox Studio and Minecraft could potentially be used in schools to aid educational and social development. Okay, I'll just pass over to David.
To give a little bit of the genesis of this session, which is that when CMC came up with the theme for 2024 of Connect, Collaborate, Commit, we were thinking that much of it was described in terms that was about the connection, collaboration, and commitment of content creators, of broadcasters, of distributors, and that we really wanted to flip it and come at it from the other side, and that is how young people themselves connect with each other, how they collaborate with each other in ways that are changing and evolving, and the fact that this is one of the most activist generations. Gen Z and Gen Alpha are among the most activist generations that are out there. So how they use these digital tools that are so inherent in their lives to commit to the causes that they care about. Back to you.
Cool. So let's look at how young people are connected then. So this slide is basically showing the access that teenagers have to certain devices. And if you've ever met a 12 to 15-year-old, they've probably had a phone in their hand at some point. And this is exactly what this is showing. The access and usage of TV sets and PC laptops in particular is also really, really high. Tablets less so, and we tend to find that it's younger children that are interacting with them a little bit more versus teenagers. But as you can see, device access certainly grows with age there across teenagers as well. And when we're looking at the weekly share of time for kind of different activities on devices, you've kind of got watching video and playing games there in the kind of blue, solid blue part. And that's showing that obviously the number of hours is quite high. And that's actually quite stable across all the ages from 9 to 18 years. Whereas when it comes to, social media, which is more the pink blocks on the top there, it certainly is growing with age and access and usability of. And it's worth saying, I think at this point as well, that, and we will go into this a little bit later, but teenagers in particular are using different platforms at different times and sometimes at the same time as well. And I'm sure you probably heard that across other maybe sessions that you attended. But yeah, it's certainly something that they're constantly switching up. So when we're looking at gaming, messaging, and then on socials as well, this breaks down the weekly time that they're connecting with others. And as you can see there, gaming is particularly high and kind of double the amount of time for messaging on socials. During the clickroom groups, especially in the male sessions, it certainly became apparent that all of the participants had either a PS5, a Nintendo Switch, or an Xbox, and they actually claimed that they were talking to their friends every day on these devices as well and staying connected that way. So this is this one's looking at the different for the middle column there, which is representing the 12 to 15-year-olds. YouTube is basically peaking and then teetering off a little bit. And with the older 16 to 18-year-olds, you have quite a lot of clustering at the top there. And certainly as teens get older, Snapchat and TikTok are certainly popular on here. And the pink quote that you'll see from a 15-year-old girl from the click room as well kind of is saying, I stopped using WhatsApp as much as everyone because they moved to Snapchat. And that just kind of shows that kind of peer behaviours is certainly coming into play here, and they're switching up their behaviours. If other people are messaging on Snapchat, that's what they're moving on to as well. So then we're looking at how different platforms and apps kind of shows different behaviours and what they're more likely to undertake when they're using specific ones. So you'll see this kind of diagram on the right there. So it probably comes as no surprise that YouTube's being used to watch content, TikTok's being used to watch and share, Snapchat to chat and share, and Instagram to chat and upload. And once again, like we say, they can be using these kind of all at once and switching between them, but it's just good to know what different platforms are being used for. So then we were asking teenagers during the click room as well, when you, and this is from State of the Nation as well, but when you're connecting in real life, what does that mean to you? And when you're connecting online, what does that mean to you? And they certainly came up with different pros and cons, but certainly the feeling for them of connecting to friends in real life meant that they could have kind of more in-depth conversations, and these conversations wouldn't be kind of misconstrued like they could be if it was over message, because they don't know the tone of voice of someone. So having deeper conversations, for example, about topics that are important to them is certainly something that they find valuable, and that's how they're kind of communicating for deeper things. However, for virtual, it probably comes as no surprise that it's about immediacy and ease, and the fact that it's kind of, if it's past their curfew at 8 p.m. or if they live in a more kind of rural location, then, they're able to log on to an online game or an app and speak to their friends immediately. And that was equally as important to them. So, I'll pass over to David to talk about how young people collaborate.
Once they're connected, we find that this is a generation that works together at things, and as Laura pointed out, there's a platform, a use for each platform, a platform for each use. They're very specific about what these things are good for. And one of the things we find is that the social gaming platforms in particular, the user-generated content platforms, Fortnite and Roblox, Minecraft, are the place where they tend to gather to collaborate. I was quite taken with this statistic that very few, only really a fifth or a quarter of players of Roblox and Minecraft have ever played by themselves. So they really see this as a gathering place. And some of this started during the pandemic. It was always built into the games, but some of it did start in the pandemic, where we describe it as down on the corner went up on the server, and all of their social lives had to go, social and gaming lives and play lives had to go into digital formats. But it's quite striking to see how few of them actually ever do go on their own. The quote on the left, which came from the creation generation, I don't want the takeaway from that to be that kids don't play together in real life, that they don't play outside, that they don't explore, because they do, absolutely. There is a remarkable map, being here in Sheffield, there's a remarkable map that you can find online of 4 generations of young people and what their range was, how far they were allowed to range over the course of a day in their play. And 4 generations ago, basically, they had access to the entire city. By now, each generation it got smaller, and by this generation, essentially they have to the end of their block. And so you can see that there are opportunities for free play outdoors together have become much, much less. And so they take a lot of that free play into the social gaming platforms. And what's interesting about these platforms is there's kind of a flywheel that goes to it, which is you go there to find your community. One of the great things about a platform like Roblox, with tens of millions of games on it, and games that your peers may have created, or professional companies may have created, or brands may have created, is that you can really find any community there, any group that shares an interest in a type of game, in a topic, in a brand, in a favorite piece of content. So the platforms build the communities because they have content there that attracts fandoms to be together. And then the communities build the platform, in that if they don't find what they want, if they don't find the brands they want, or if they have another idea about how a game would be fun to play, they can create their own. So it's this flywheel of creation and play and community. And it's not just it's not just the development of community, it's also how it affects the gameplay. We're finding more and more games for these platforms are not competitive games. They may not even be games in the classic sense of having a destination or an outcome, but more in the sense that they are a place for exploring collaboratively, or exploring together, or building something together, or finding. We found during the pandemic, and you may have read this, it was found that kids were having their birthday parties in Roblox, that they would gather, they would play in a particular game, and then go to the waiting room or the outside room to have the party. So we see here that this is why they come together, is because that's where their friends are. In the same way that they move from WhatsApp to Snapchat because that's where their friends are, they move game to game, or they come to games because that's where they find their friends. I mentioned at the beginning that this is probably the most activist generation that we've ever come across. Things that they care deeply about. They recognize the issues that are happening in the world. And it only makes sense at that point that they use the platforms that have been part of their lives forever to express themselves in this and to take action in this. So Gen Z is the first digital generation. They've never known a time without digital media. Gen Alpha is the first mobile digital generation. They've never known a time when they weren't carrying the world in their pockets. So you can see these quotes that say, it only makes sense to me that I would find my community, that I would take my action, and I would express my views in these platforms. You can see at the upper left there, that's a women's protest against it's saying the sign is no fear. speaking out for Ukraine in another game, and then Lego and Fortnite of ways to tackle climate change. As part of State of the Nation, we looked at 9 different things that were 9 different things emerged that were concerns of them. And you can sort of divide them into 2 categories of global issues, things that are very big and affect really everyone worldwide, and then things that are, we think of as the close to home issues, the things that are more personal, that are going to happen within their in real life friend groups, that are going to happen at school, that are going to happen in the community. And these are the ones that emerged for them as most important. And if we look at how much they care about, what percentage of them they feel personally affected by it, I was surprised to see that climate was only number 4 when, granted, all the numbers are fairly closely clustered there, but that it was only number 4 in the things they care about. But you can see that it is something that they worry about, and it does rise to the top of the one where they feel most personally affected. And I think what we see here at some level is a feeling of helplessness, that when you talk about global issues, it's so big and so hard to find a place to sort of put yourself into it and to take action, that's one of the reasons why they care, they worry, they feel personally affected. But it's like, well, but I've got homework due tomorrow, so I'm not sure exactly what I can do. And so the opportunity for content creators, for media companies to give them practical ways that they can turn that work into community, I think is very important. They're much more likely to be able to manage the ones that are sort of the close to home issues, and to find ways, whether it's in more direct uses of media, the messaging apps, the social media apps, to deal with the problems that they face with that. They are certainly concerned about their safety, but they feel most personally affected by how others view them. So, and that's the kind of thing that they will manage, whether it's in real life or whether it's in their social media practices. They recognize the challenges of these things. They know that social media, and probably much of what they read in the news, is about social media not being good for kids. And yet they know, but I need to be there. That's where my friends are. That's where my community is. I'm not going to give it up. This is one of the reasons I have problems with the term addiction, is if you're addicted to something, you really have to avoid it. There is no way to avoid digital media today or social media today. So let me just throw in a few conclusions, and then we will pass it off to Ofcom. To the extent that you can connect your fans' virtual lives and their real lives, they don't always distinguish a difference between them. One of the things we found is young people will spend as much on their avatar clothing as they do on their physical clothing. We're moving toward a time when you can match up what you buy in virtual space and in real world space. So if you can give them both that depth and that intimacy and that immediacy, by finding ways to connect their virtual and their real lives, that's very powerful. As I said before, as Laura said before, every device and platform has its purpose. You really have to understand where your audience is, how they connect to your brand, how they want to connect with your brand or your content, and not be in the wrong place for the wrong audiences. And then, as you saw in the chart that showed time spent, video and games provide the foundation. You really have to start understanding that that's where your audience spends the most time. But they're going to build on that with the social and messaging technology uses. That's the glue that lets their interests in video and gaming come together and be shared. In terms of collaborating, as much of, I mentioned before that most games now, or many games now, are collaborative, not competitive. They don't feel a need to have a winner. Young people don't feel a need to be better than. They'll love it if they set a high score or something. They'll love to talk about it, but they also want to just have a good time with their friends. The hardest thing that we find is inviting collaboration from your fans. Actually, someone from Lego was here yesterday and corrected me on this. I'll use a different example. There are a lot of brands out there that have games on Roblox that were not created by the company or by the brand itself. And 10 years ago, if that had happened, then a lawyer would have written a letter to a 9-year-old saying, please take this down, it's a violation of our copyright. Now they understand that this is a way to listen to what your fans like, watch how they want to play, see how they view your characters or your brand. That the second in charge at Netflix, when Squid Games came out, there were 100,000 Squid Game games on Roblox, none of them created by Netflix. And they had one of the top people there said, you know what, this is great about our audience. It's a matter of trust as well. If you say to them, I trust that you can develop or, that you can create what you want, fan fiction, fan art, fan video, fan games, and not violate the confidence of the brand, then they feel that you're listening to them and that you trust them. And then finally, in terms of commitment, respecting your fans' commitment, understanding that they are very serious about it, that they really, they know that they're young, they know that there's not everything that they can do, but they really want to be treated with respect around that, and they want to be given ways to help. You have to do it authentically because the Gen Z and Gen Alpha have the world's best bullshit detectors. They will immediately tell you if they feel that you're being inauthentic with them, or if you're trying to patronize them or trying to market to them around something that they care deeply about. And finally, as much as we've talked about all the things they do in digital space, there's only so much that can be done virtually. At some point, these communities are going to come together. They're going to use digital media to create communities that will come together to take real-world action. That's us. That's how to contact us. If you would like the extended version of the deck, the EP version, then just drop one of us an email or come to the website and find us. Thank you.
Thank you, David and Laura. Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm a researcher from Ofcom and I work in our media literacy team. And today I'm going to give you a few insights from our long-standing media literacy studies and just give you a flavour of how children are navigating the digital world today. Now, just to start with, this chart might not come as a shock to you, saying that children watch the least linear TV of all age groups, and their decline has actually been the fastest of all the age groups. So you can see this kind of pinky purpley line at the bottom here shows you the decline from 2012 to 2023. But what I'm going to chat to you today about is what children are doing instead, so where can you find them instead? This is where I'm quickly going to plug our media literacy studies. So we have a quant and a qual study, and the quant has been running for around 20 years. We have a wave per year. It covers children aged 3 to 17 and their parents, although we don't survey 3-year-olds, we survey their parents on their behalf, and that's true for 3 to 7-year-olds. Today for this presentation, we'll be homing in on 5 to 15s. We speak to around 4,000 children and 6,000 parents a year. And for the qual study, this is a longitudinal ethnographic study. We follow around 20 children a year. We try to keep the same children year on year, but obviously some do age out or decide to drop out. And this has been going for around 10 years as well. So let's get into it. We're starting with the insight that virtually all children in the UK are online. Notice I say are online rather than go online. They really don't distinguish between online and other spaces. They don't distinguish between online and traditional media. They can go on YouTube on their TVs and TikTok on their tablets. But I just do want to briefly draw your attention to just how young these children are who are going online. One of the key headlines to come out of our reports this year was that 5 to 7-year-olds are increasingly present online. You can see data points here, such as a quarter of kids aged 5 to 7 have smartphones, more and more year on year are online gaming, and this actually does include an increase in those playing shooter games. And yeah, so year on year, we are seeing more 5 to 7-year-olds use social media, watch live stream videos, use sites to send messages or make voice or video calls. And just focusing in on social media for a second, we do ask the parents of these 5 to 7-year-olds who do use social media whether their child uses these independently or not. And quite alarmingly, 32% of social media users aged 5 to 7 are using these independently. And in our quant, we're also seeing year on year that 5 to 7s are more likely to be using WhatsApp, Instagram. They have their own profiles on several platforms such as WhatsApp, YouTube, and Instagram. And so in addition to that headline, there really is a treasure trove of insights in our studies. I have picked out 5 this year that I think you guys should know about children's online experiences this year. Growing preference for short form content. I'm going to coin it micro content. And in our quant study, there has been a year-on-year trend of fewer children saying that they watch longer form content such as films or whole TV shows. And in our qual, we've also seen year on year in the past 10 waves, children move further away from longer form media and towards shorter form video content. The trend definitely continued this year, with most children saying they preferred watching content on social media than shows and films on TV. And I'm just going to give Neve a shout out here from our qual study. She spoke about watching very short clips, so like 10 seconds or less, taken from different scenes of the TV show Friends, which had been compiled together on TikTok. She'd never actually watched a whole episode of Friends before. The only medium she knows Friends through is from TikTok, watching Chandler's funniest moments. And it's not just short form or micro content. There are content creators who are increasingly using an array of attention grabbing techniques. This does sort of raise a chicken and egg conundrum. So what came first, all these content creators making these like micro content, or this preference for this content? So moving on to our second insight, this is a new topic we added into our quant tracker this year. It is the kind of hot topic at the moment, AI. We found that 2 in 5 8 to 15-year-olds are using AI tools, rising to over half of 12 to 15-year-olds. Children are actually almost twice as likely as adults to have used AI. We know that because we've got a parallel adults study. And that was at this time of surveying, which was autumn last year. So it will be really interesting to see how those numbers kind of creep up in the next wave. And you can see at the bottom here, we asked those children who have used AI what they've used it for. And the most common answer was for fun. These children are really into their using new technologies just for their own enjoyment. For school and learning purposes, that's a common reason for using AI too. We do have plans this year to kind of dig a bit deeper into the specifics of how children are using AI, so just watch this space there. And on to the third, we've seen over the years children use online spaces to be creative in a variety of different ways, ranging from adding funny filters to a photo, making their own memes, and even coding and programming. And we've also heard this in our qual as well. So on the left here, you can see Terry, who likes to her and her dance friends like to put together different dance montages, and Angus on the right here, who uses the software Scratch to create his own games in his free time. But something we're witnessing increasingly so is their preference to keep their creative content private. And in our qual this year, kids are feeling quite risk averse, although we do have a couple of participants in our study who are posting and blogging online. For the most part, there is this real reluctance to post. They've still got their kind of techniques to express themselves, so they like posts to symbolise their interests. They kind of post things temporarily on Instagram or Snapchat stories. But you can see from these quotes here, there is this real reluctance because they don't have to worry about making mistakes, as Terry says on the left, or Taylor kind of worries about regretting posting things. So she says that she's a more private person with her TikTok. And our quant data really does back these findings up. Only around a quarter of children say they share or post things on social media, as others kind of opt to just like things or read and watch things. Moving to the fourth insight here, this also features a new question we asked in our quant, which unveiled that a large proportion, so around 7 in 10 of 12 to 15s, are using online apps and services to benefit their health and well-being. And this kind of increases for girls compared to this age who are using online apps and services for this. So you can see that teens are kind of using these online tools for a variety of different reasons in this health and well-being space. Most common is to relax, but you've got people who are using it for sleeping, to get support when they're feeling anxious, and even healthy eating. But it is important to consider that the online world can provide good and bad advice. So whilst it might, on surface level, seem good that these children are wanting to be more healthy or be more aware of their well-being, you've got to take into consideration that children are less likely to be able to decipher between the good and the bad advice. There is a participant in our qual, Frankie, who is following a TikTok creator who tells him how to grow quicker. I think he even promotes supplements on how to that say that will help them grow quicker, which is obviously quite a worrying thing. Now, just looking at a kind of genre within the health and well-being online space for a second. ASMR, for those who don't know, it stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. It's not particularly anything new, popularity over the years, particularly with girls. So almost all of the girls in the study this year mentioned watching some form of ASMR. Many described the kind of relaxing benefits they were seeing. For instance, Amber on the left here says she watches ASMR mostly at night because it helps her fall asleep and it's nice and relaxing. Now, Amber is one of the ones who watch the kind of, what I'd say, the classic ASMR, the kind of, seen an example there of wooden objects in a kind of soup and stirring it around, if you can imagine that kind of nice noise. But this year we've noticed a new sort of ASMR come to the forefront of this genre. It's called personal attention ASMR, and it involves content creators kind of directly addressing the viewer in a soft, caring manner. I might call it a creepy manner. It comes in all sorts of forms, such as brushing hair, a friend in a classroom whispering to you, and as you can see on the screen here, a best friend doing your makeup. It's kind of giving this increased intimacy. It's kind of pseudo companionship and provides them with this intimacy, with one of the girls saying it was an easy way to feel as though they had company. Now, for the fifth and final insight here, I'm actually dipping into our news consumption survey, and we find there that 45% of 12 to 15s say they aren't interested in the news. And as you can see on this chart here, TikTok is the most used single source of news across all platforms, followed by YouTube and Instagram. And additionally, 1 in 10 teens view TikTok as their most important news source, more than any other individual source. So we are finding that although many teens don't necessarily seek out what they see as news, they are encountering it a lot via social media. And our qual study here showcases, one, this disinterest in current affairs, although you can see that many do come across a range of news stories via their social media feeds, namely TikTok. And then some do also try to evaluate what is true or not so true. So clearly, in children's lives, we see that they tap into it for health and well-being advice. They like to be creative online. They love to watch TV shows on TikTok instead of traditional media. So with this, it's really crucial that they develop these media literacy skills. And we found over the years that children are in fact increasingly wary of any information and content they see online. So you can see on the left here, we saw many 8 to 15s who are skeptical about whether information on social media is true or not. However, and this is a really important point to land, this does not mean that they won't either trip up and or experiment online. And so just going to introduce Ofcom's Making Sense of Media programme. This is a programme that's helping to improve media literacy of UK adults and children. We've recently closed our consultation on our 3-year media literacy strategy, and we'll be publishing the finalised strategy later this year. And the strategy centres around kind of 3 columns around research, evidence and evaluation sources. So like this research I've talked you through today, engagement with platforms, as these are where these children are going, so it's really important to work with those platforms to ensure that they kind of advocate for media literacy as well. And lastly, people and partnerships. Media literacy is obviously about people, and impact is best achieved through, we know through our research that impact is best achieved through local trusted partners, rather than like a national campaign for media literacy. So yeah, thanks so much for listening today. And if you'd like to find out more about the insights that I've talked you through, kind of policy-specific media literacy questions, let me just direct you to the bottom email there, MSOM. But if you have any research questions, then I am your person to go to.
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks. Anybody got any questions? Any questions in the house? We're all looking right at you, so...
I do have some questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question is around the role of the parents. So when I see like 5 to 7 year olds, 30% of them go online independently, and so like at what age, I guess, and what is the role about like being this safeguard and just like filtering what kids have access to or not? And do you have any, I guess, stats on this? Or
Yeah, I mean, the point is that I don't think we want to put all of the responsibility on one thing. So like, I don't want to put all the responsibility on Ofcom or all the responsibility on a parent, because I know the way things are going, it's not obvious that these 5 to 7s are having access to social media, but the younger the child is, I guess the point I'm trying to make is their like they see their peers online. So if their parents like going to stop them, they'll be like, "Oh, mum, but..."
Yeah, that's peer pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So...
And then more generally, so if it's not just the access, parents always wondering, like, is my child is really talking to his friends or just to some random strangers that we don't know, all this safety around this and communication and things. I was
just going to say, I think it really varies. We did some research for Shaw Rocket Fund earlier in the year, and I think it really varies as well, the knowledge that parents have of these different platforms. And actually, I'm generally a qualitative researcher, and I'll do sessions with kids, and the parents will say to me, like looking at me as an expert of these different platforms, what should they go on, what shouldn't they go on? And a lot of them are clueless, and I think that is certainly worth kind of key responsibility, is it's completely mixed. But, we tend to find that one parent, if it is a dual parenting household, one of them typically has more knowledge of these things and takes over the responsibility of the tech versus another. But yeah, and also I think it's worth saying, like, the access of 5 to 7 year olds, like, a lot of the time they're getting devices which are handed down to them, which might be a little bit older, so they might not necessarily have full access to loads of things. Or we hear quite often that 10 or 11 year olds get their own phones, but they might not have a SIM card, so they can't use any data, and it's like, it's not quite the 3310 snakes of the playing Snake on your 3310 world, but there is certain ways that they minimise that as well. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything.
I was actually going to ask, when you talk to the parents about that, do you give them a list of social media so that they know what you're thinking of, or is it a broader question? Because you listed some of the platforms that just shocked me that kids would be on it, but I wonder if they're also thinking of Messenger Kids or any of the things that are designed for younger people.
Yeah, so the way our survey works is we ask the parents if their child has access to any of the devices. We ask so for the 5 to the 7s, it is all the parents answering. We have a list of kind of different functions. So we have got like a social media function, and we have the kind of
the main ones, I'd say, the most common ones, and their parents select, like, yes, my child is on Facebook, yes, my child is on Twitter. Not that their child will be on Twitter, but you never know. Cool.
Is there any good examples of quality developed media for children well-being developed, promoting well-being?
That's a great question. I was actually in the Commissioner's preschool talk yesterday, and I know they're commissioning, is it Cosmic Yoga? They're commissioning like a TV show based on that YouTube series, so I know that's definitely in work, or let alone with children in mind. I just say there is a lot to consider in that space. By like well-being by design. I don't know if you had anything on that with the AI talk that you did, not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One is, since the pandemic in particular, I think there's been a real focus in commissioning on social and emotional learning and social and emotional well-being, primarily in linear, but also to some extent in games. And I know you have worked on some of the games that we've done around health and hygiene, around the one that really touches me the most is we created a game for a group called Experience Camps that's for children who are experiencing grief. And it's a place for them to take their children, their friends in Roblox into Unding and help them, be a good friend to them. So across the platforms, there is, and then as you mentioned, there are things like the RITEC study that came up in the AI, which was done by UNICEF and Lego and the John Gans Cooney Center in New York, that was designed to look a lot more of that coming out. The Gina Davis Institute just came out with a report for game developers on responsible game, on diversity and inclusion in game development. So a lot of people are thinking about this right now, and I think in response to the amount of negative publicity for social media, for time spent with media and things like that, I think there's a response from industry.
I was just going to say, from, I guess, more mainstream platforms and gaming platforms, and this was in partnership with the Walton Family Foundation, Minecraft actually came out as really interesting because you've got like two modes with that. One of them survival, where you can like die, which is a bit more heavy, and then one of them's more like a creative mode. And actually, so we were asking kids about, do you learn anything from Minecraft? And if you ask them the question, they'd say no. But when you say, can you tell me about Minecraft? They'd tell me all about, it was about like different types of rocks, like sedimentary, and you have to use this kind of rock to create this tool to build this. And they were honestly using words which I was like, I got a B in science and I have no idea what you're like, you know what I mean, like all those years ago. But I think that was fascinating because they were learning things, and that through teamwork, as we was talking about, like collaboration, but also just, science from a game, and they found it so fun because they didn't realize that they were learning. I think that's like part of the thing. But yeah, so I'd say like if a parent was, considering a platform, I would say Minecraft's pretty cool. So
Thank you.
Just on the micro content, I guess, point, from that longitudinal study that you look at, is there any signs on the impact of children's attention spans and ability to concentrate?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not something, because it's this hyperstimulation has been just coming very recently, so we don't actually know the long-term effects yet. But it's something we've definitely got our point on the pulse, and it's something that we'll definitely be exploring, because the content creators know that the short content is liked, so they're just going to keep on making it shorter and shorter. So I can definitely see the direction we're going in.
Having looked at it for a long time, I think it's not a question of attention span. I actually saw it phrased very nicely. Joe Redfern posted recently that it's not attention span, it's interest span. That if you captivate them, if you give them content that they're engaged with, they will watch Frozen. They'll start to finish. They'll stick with long form content. There are so many more options now that didn't exist for previous generations, and so we attribute it to attention span, but there really wasn't a space for short form content 10, 15 years ago. So I think it's a mistake to attribute it to that kids are changing, their brains are changing, that it's an attention span thing, and much more just about they make very quick decisions about what it is that captivates them.
Can I just add on that then? There is a very good article in the Children Media Foundation yearbook, which is available free to everyone, from an academic in London who's done research on this very area. And there is some evidence that it's impacted on their ability to do certain tests at a young age, so that's worth reading.
I was about to say it's also about the emotion addiction of, it's like the adrenaline of going through that, it has to have an impact, like the way like they go quick and they have emotion, they cry and they laugh, and it's a massive impact on the, what do you say, the brain and the emotion, how they react to that. And that it feels like it's an addiction, like when we scroll, it's the same kind of the scrolling addiction that they have with the sports. Keep on having the next feed.
Yeah, I think for a lot of like younger children as well, let's say like 2 to 5, it's like the humour aspect as well. It is the quick fix of the funniest moments of Bluey, for example. That's certainly what we saw across the YouTube platforms.
A comment and a question. So the comment, I'm Elizabeth from the Lego Group. So the comment is that we do have games on Roblox now. So just to let you know, David. And the question is I saw your research was with 27, and Ellie, I saw that I can't remember how many thousands you said, but what was the composition for diversity and neurodiverse ethnicity? Just because I would hate for us to take these numbers and say that it's all children when perhaps it's not. Right.
So for Click Room, it was 27 participants in the UK, so a mix of male and females aged 12 to 15, whereas State of the Nation, that was UK based and that was nationwide, 12 to 15 as well, over 500. I can't remember the exact face-to-face versus online, but it was 500 overall. And then with trends, like I said, any data from there was taken, that is global, but it was taken from the UK, and that's 16,000 families that we track their media consumption. And in terms of like neurodiversity, it would just be a natural kind of fallout with that. We wouldn't specifically, put a number on that, especially.
So you wouldn't have any breakdown for race, ethnicity, religion?
For example, like we'd always put like a general like mix, but yeah, I wouldn't know the exact set.
For trends, we have more demographic breakdown.
Yes, we do. Yeah, for trends
Clickroom is
especially.
very good for getting a snapshot of attitudes, and that it's not supposed to. It's not meant to be a representative or deep dive.
Yeah, for Clickroom we did actually look at specifying rural versus urban, just to see in terms of the connectivity, to see if there was a difference. Nothing particularly came out, just that was more in a face-to-face, like they might go to more green spaces versus more, city kind of areas, and the accessibility of that. But yeah, that's
I would think access would be huge then between rural.
That was one of the reasons why we wanted to do both.
Exactly.
And access both of digital access to broadband, but also access to friends in real life. If you live further apart, how often you're able to be with your friends.
Interesting juxtaposition, actually.
Yeah.
And with our study, so the quant is around 4,000 children, 6,000 parents, and again, it is kind of a natural fallout in terms of ethnicity and neurodivergent. We do have a good percentage of them. We have quite a fair few who say they've got limiting or impacted conditions, and then we also quote it on social setting as well, I believe. I'd have to double check.
Hi, I'm just wondering, do you also think that maybe streaming services may have an issue with children trying to find content of each streaming service online? So, for example, TikTok, they have series of like any series you can find on any streaming service where they can watch it in short bursts without having to go through paywalls.
That's like correct. Yeah, no, I can definitely, I don't think they're necessarily seeking out, like, I don't think me, for example, put in Friends. I think it just comes up on our algorithm because it's just like that short, like funny content. Because she didn't, in the study, I don't believe she had a real love for Friends, but she just came across a few short clips of it.
It'd be fascinating to ask her, what is Friends about? Since she's never seen the show.
I know, yeah, she just thinks that Chandler's telling lie.
Question for Laura and David. You mentioned about Roblox and being a gathering space, a collaborating space. Were there any concerns brought up about safeguarding based on the fact that there's no mandatory age verification?
I think there are always ongoing concerns on platforms like that. On the UGC, the social platforms, I've been impressed, particularly with Roblox, having a vice president of civility whose job is to work in both directions, to work with the creators of the games and experiences on Roblox to help understand how you create a community in these spaces, but also with players to understand how to be good to each other within the game. I don't have any hard data for it. It does seem like when things crop up, they get taken down quite quickly. But there is pretty good, on the major platforms, there's pretty good observation of violations of the rules.
Okay, thank you guys.